Smoke rolled along the ceiling of the gym like a living thing, swallowing the painted basketball lines and the paper snowflakes the kids had taped up an hour earlier. The emergency lights flicked once, then went dark, plunging the Christmas carnival into a red, pulsing glow from the exit signs. Somebody screamed. Then a child. Then 3 more. "Stay low, Gabe." Lawson shouted, his voice rough from the heat and the years he'd tried not to care this much about anything again. He could feel his daughter's small fingers digging into his wrist as they crawled across the slick floor. Beside them, a woman coughed, hard hand over her mouth. The Santa hat she'd been wearing trampled somewhere behind them. The door he'd been aiming for was blocked now, smoke pouring from the crack at the bottom like black water. He froze, muscles-locked brain running triage the way it hadn't since the desert. Fire crackled in the walls. Someone pounded on the other side of the gym, yelling for their kid. The woman beside him grabbed his arm. "Gabe," she choked, eyes wide with fear, and something else. "Trust." His daughter leaned close, her voice barely more than a rasp. "Daddy, this way, please." Her eyes met his through the haze, the same steady brown as her mother's had been the last time he'd seen her alive. He could hear beams groaning overhead. Time was gone. Decision or death. He wrapped an arm around each of them, pulled them tight against his sides, and chose. "Before I go any further, tell me where you're listening from tonight. And hit that like and subscribe button if you believe courage still matters in this world. Because to understand how a quiet, worn-out single dad ended up crawling through smoke with a woman he'd met only hours earlier, you have to know where this night really started. Gabe Lawson was 37 years old and bone-deep tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. By day, he drove a delivery route on the edges of Houston, hauling office supplies and break room coffee to people who barely glanced at his name tag. By evening, he was dad and chef and homework department in a 2-bedroom apartment that still had a faint dent in the drywall where his daughter had once thrown a stuffed unicorn too hard. 3 years earlier, he'd been Sergeant Lawson Army medic, the guy they trusted when things went bad. And then one December afternoon, between deployments, his wife had gone out to grab last-minute Christmas groceries and never made it past the intersection by the strip mall. A drunk driver, a phone call, a funeral 2 days before Christmas. Since then, holidays were something he endured for his little girl, not anything he celebrated. He strung lights because she asked. He made cocoa and watched the same movie until the disc skipped because it kept her from noticing how often his eyes went distant. His 9-year-old Harper was the only thing that could pry a real laugh out of him now. She had her mom's big expressions and his stubbornness, a dangerous combo. She also had a new habit of watching him the way adults watch each other, measuring worried older than her years. "Dad," she'd said one Tuesday night in early December while they sat at the scarred kitchen table painting ornaments, "do you ever miss having someone to talk to when I go to bed?" He'd tried to joke it away, but she didn't let him. A few days later, he found out why. The community center down the street hosted an annual Christmas carnival and family night, something he usually skipped in favor of microwaved pizza and staying home. This year, though, there was a new banner hanging out front when he drove past Single Parents Christmas Meetup. Games, food, and movie night. Kids welcome. He might have kept driving. He wanted to. But that evening, Harper came home from school with a crumpled flyer and a guilty look on her face. "I, signed us up," she confessed, biting her lip. "Mrs. Landry said grown-ups need friends too. And they said there'd be a drawing for a big bike. I put your name on the list." Gabe stared at the flyer, at the hopeful mess of glitter glue she'd smeared on the bottom. His first instinct was to say no, to stay where it was safe and quiet and predictable. But his daughter's eyes were shining in that way that told him this wasn't about bikes or games. This was about her wanting him to step back into the world. He swallowed, forced a smile that started out stiff, and then loosened. "All right, Bug," he said. "We'll go. One night? No promises after that." He had no idea that in a few weeks' time that decision would have them both crawling across a smoke-filled gym floor, and that a woman he'd never met would be right there with them, changing everything. Gabe had forgotten how loud community centers could get when they were trying too hard to make people feel cheerful. By the time he and Harper stepped through the double doors on the night of the Christmas carnival, the air was already thick with popcorn scent, squeaky balloons, and a scatter of kids weaving between folding tables. String lights drooped from basketball hoops someone had dragged in a giant inflatable snowman, and a volunteer DJ was playing carols a little too fast, like he was trying to outrun the season. Harper latched onto his sleeve, eyes big, excited, but cautious. She'd worn her sparkly reindeer sweater because she said it made people smile, and he wondered not for the first time when his 9-year-old had become the emotionally intelligent one in their house. "Dad," she whispered, "do we just go in?" "Guess." So he muttered, trying not to look like he was bracing for impact. They made it 4 steps before someone called out, "Gabe Lawson, well, look what the cat dragged in." He turned to see Mark Halprin, the PTA president and self-proclaimed king of volunteer events. Mark coached every sport he could wedge into his schedule and carried himself like a man certain everyone admired him. He had a smile that could turn sharp in a blink. "Didn't expect to see you at one of these family nights," Mark said, giving Gabe a once-over that wasn't subtle. "Thought you usually kept to yourself." Gabe kept his tone even. Harper wanted to come. "Ah." Mark dragged out the word like it explained everything. "Well, good for you, buddy. Trying. That's the important part. Trying." The same word people had thrown at him after the funeral, as if trying could make a family whole again. Harper edged closer to him. Gabe rested a hand on her shoulder, steadying both of them. "We're just here to have some fun," he said. Of course. Mark clapped him on the arm a shade too hard. "Hey, if you need help figuring out any of the activities, let me know. Some of this stuff can be overwhelming." Gabe didn't respond. He didn't have to. Mark was already striding away, his judgment hanging in the air like a draft. They moved deeper into the room. Volunteers at craft tables beckoned kids over. A cookie decorating station stretched along the far wall, powdered sugar drifting like an indoor snowstorm. Across the gym, folding chairs were set up for a movie later on, and a giant poster announced the drawing for the bike. "Daddy, look." Harper pointed at the craft tables. "They've got make-your-own ornament kits." Her excitement softened some of the tightness in his chest. "All right, let's go check it out." They settled at a table where a handful of other kids were gluing pom-poms and pipe cleaners onto wooden stars. Harper dove in immediately, grabbing glitter pens like a general selecting weapons. Gabe tried to help her glue a ribbon, but succeeded only in getting it stuck to his own fingers twice. A woman across the table laughed, warm, gentle, amused, not unkind. First time. He glanced up to see a woman about his age, maybe a little younger, with dark curls and a blue sweater dusted with glitter from the crafts. Second time, he said. First time was a disaster, too. She grinned. "I'm Nora." She tipped her head toward the little boy beside her. "That's my son Liam, Gabe, and this is Harper." The kids exchanged shy looks. Nora and Gabe traded polite smiles. If he'd been in another stage of life, his pulse might have kicked up a notch. She had that approachable steadiness about her. But he wasn't here to meet anyone. He was here because Harper had written his name on a form without asking. Still, it wasn't unpleasant to sit next to someone who didn't seem to judge him. Not at first. As they worked, a group of PTA volunteers passed behind the craft table carrying boxes of supplies. He heard the whisper before he saw who said it. "That's the Lawson guy. The delivery driver. Lost his wife around Christmas. Poor things." Another whisper followed. "Yeah, he never comes to anything. Didn't he used to be Army? Heard he bailed on some program after his wife died. Guess he couldn't handle real jobs anymore. He looks exhausted. I mean, I get it, but still. The kids feel it, you know." The comments were quiet, but not quiet enough. Even if he hadn't caught every word, Harper had frozen beside him, her glue-covered fingers hovering mid-air. Her shoulders tucked inward the way they did when she felt embarrassed on his behalf, something no child should ever have to feel. Nora looked uncomfortable. "Ignore them," she murmured. "People love to talk more than they love to understand." He gave a tight nod. "I'm used to it." But Harper wasn't. Her small face had gone pale, her eyes glossy with hurt she didn't want him to see. He nudged her elbow lightly. "Hey," he said softly. "Let's finish this masterpiece." She forced a tiny smile, but the light was dimmer. The damage was done. They moved on to the cookie table afterward, though the mood between them sagged. Gabe bought them hot cocoa from the concession stand, but the guy running it, Tommy Rankin, whose daughter was in Harper's class, lifted an eyebrow. "Didn't know you were coming out tonight," Tommy said, handing over 2 foam cups. "Figured you'd be working late like always." "Got the night off," Gabe said. "Good for Harper then." Tommy nodded at the little girl, then added too casually, "Kids need stable routines this time of year." Gabe stared at him. "We have a routine." "Oh, sure. Yeah, just saying." He walked away before Gabe could respond. Harper slid her hand into his, her fingers, small and warm. Her silence was heavier than anything anyone had said. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She nodded, though her throat bobbed. "People think you're tired." A beat. And sad. He exhaled slow. "I am tired, Bug. And some days I am sad. But that's not all I am." She looked up at him, trusting and fragile, and trying so hard to be brave for him. "I know, Daddy." And still he saw the doubt trace across her face, not about him, but about the world's view of him. That wasn't a burden she should ever have had to shoulder. He squatted to her level. "Harper, listen. People fill the gaps in what they don't know with whatever makes them feel better. Doesn't make them right." She swallowed, fighting tears. "And you don't have to protect me by pretending it doesn't hurt you." "I see you, sweetheart." That broke her. She wrapped her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. He held her tight, more aware than ever of the quiet pressure building around them. Judgment, assumptions, small-town gossip that never stopped long enough to learn the truth. Later, when the carnival shifted toward the movie portion of the night, families gathered folding chairs. Gabe and Harper found themselves near the back, as if the universe kept nudging them into the shadows. Nora waved them over to sit closer, but before he could answer, Mark reappeared. "Gabe, I've been looking for you." Mark stood above them like a spotlight. "We're organizing the parent volunteers for the carnival finale. We need someone to help with the prize drawing booth." Gabe opened his mouth, but Mark kept going, voice a bit too loud. "It involves a little reading aloud, crowd interaction, charisma. But maybe you'd prefer something behind the scenes. Something simple, more in your comfort zone." Harper stiffened. Gabe kept his jaw relaxed. "I can handle a drawing booth." "Oh well." Mark blinked, visibly surprised. "I mean, it's fine if you're not up for," I said I can handle it. A hush spread in a small ripple around them. Families had turned to watch. Mark recovered his fake smile. "All right then, we'll let you know when it's time." He walked off, muttering something to another volunteer. Harper leaned close. "Dad, you don't have to do it if it makes you uncomfortable." He touched her hair gently. "I know, but I don't want you thinking I can't do things just because people assume I can't." She nodded slowly, but her worry didn't lift. The movie started, lights dimming, but Gabe barely saw the screen. Whispers rose and fell behind them. People talking not out of cruelty, but out of that carelessness families sometimes had around single parents, especially the ones they didn't fully understand. About 20 minutes into the movie, he heard another conversation just rose back. "He's nice, but he's always on edge. My sister saw him snap at a guy in a parking lot once. Trauma does that, I guess. Still, I wouldn't want my kids too close. You never know how people handle grief." Gabe's shoulders tensed. Harper heard it too. She leaned into his side, pressing her cheek against his arm, like maybe if she stayed close enough she could shield him from the world. And that, more than the whispers, more than Mark's condescension or Tommy's comments, carved into him. His little girl was learning what it felt like to stand beside someone the world misunderstood. She deserved better than this. The movie stumbled on scenes of holiday cheer flickering across the screen. But around Gabe, the pressure grew. Too much noise, too many eyes, too many judgments disguised as pity. He forced himself to breathe slow, controlled. At the front of the gym, volunteers began setting up the stage for the final drawing. Mark tapped the microphone, grinning out at the crowd. "All right, everyone. In a few minutes, we'll be announcing the big raffle prize. Parents assisting, please make your way up." He turned eyes, scanning, until they landed on Gabe. "Lawson. Need you up front, buddy." The entire room seemed to pivot, attention drawn toward him. Families whispering, kids staring, adults waiting to see if the tired single dad who kept to himself would rise to the moment or crumble under it. Harper grabbed his sleeve. "Dad," she whispered, "you don't have to let them do this to you." He looked down at her, those brave brown eyes, that little chin trembling as she tried to hide how much it hurt her to see him judged. He stood slowly, squeezing her hand. "I'm okay," he said softly. "I need you to trust me." The air felt thick, the gym suddenly too warm. Every insecurity clawed inside him. Every doubt he'd ever had about being enough for her, for anyone, pressed like a thumb on a bruise. He walked toward the stage under the weight of 100 unspoken opinions. And as he stepped up onto the platform beside Mark, the lights overhead flickered once, twice. Then the room plunged into darkness. The darkness wasn't quiet. It hit the room like a body blow, gasps, scraping chairs, the thump of someone tripping, kids calling for their parents. The inflatable snowman deflated somewhere in the corner with a long, pitiful hiss. A few emergency lights flickered to life, thin red lines glowing above the exits, barely enough to outline shapes in the cavernous gym. Then the smell hit. Not smoke. Ozone. A sharp electric tang that made the hairs on Gabe's arms rise. The second hit came a beat later, a metallic pop from above. Then a shower of sparks rained from the ceiling near the basketball hoop. A handful of kids screamed, scrambling away. The sound rolled through the gym like thunder, followed by another crack deeper in the building. Mark's voice, suddenly stripped of bravado, echoed through the dark. Everyone stay calm. It's probably just the breakers." Gabe knew better. He didn't have to see the panel to know exactly what had happened. Old wiring, overloaded circuits, heating units running non-stop for the carnival decorations, and they'd pushed everything too far. He'd warned the community center director months ago about the brittle conduits in this wing. She told him it wasn't in the budget yet. Another spark shower burst above the bleachers, this one landing on the vinyl seatbacks. A thin wisp of smoke curled upward. Daddy Harper's voice was small, swallowed by noise and fear. He turned so fast she startled. "I'm here. I've got you." But as he grabbed her hand, he saw something else. Kids still on the far side of the gym, pressed against the walls, lost now that the main lights were gone. A toddler was crying on the floor, parents searching blindly. The emergency exists glowed, but the crowd was drifting away from them, panic making everyone move in the wrong direction. And then came the sound that froze the whole room. A sharp, violent crack from somewhere in the south hallway. The unmistakable pop of a blown transformer. The emergency lights flickered once, twice, and died. The gym plunged into absolute black. That's when panic truly began. Voices rose at once, weaving into a frantic, disoriented chorus. Chairs clattered. Someone knocked over the snack table. Metal trays hit the floor like cymbals. Gabe heard a teacher yelling, "Everyone stay together," but her voice was swallowed in the chaos. He felt Harper cling to him, her breath hot and fast on his arm. "Daddy, Daddy, I can't see. I know. Stay with me." Somewhere across the room, Mark attempted to shout instructions, but without lights or calm. His words were pointless. The crowd surged unevenly toward one side near the doors that Gabe knew instantly wouldn't budge. When a power failure hit this old building, the magnetic locks froze. The exits wouldn't open until someone manually released the override panel, which was located in the hallway where the transformer had blown. "Dad, what's happening?" Harper's voice trembled. Gabe could feel the gym warming fast, too fast. The electrical fires were small, not yet dangerous, but without lights. And with people panicking, the real threat wasn't flames. It was stampede, trampling, chaos in the dark. His heart kicked into a rhythm he hadn't felt since the desert fast focused razor sharp. It wasn't fear. It was certainty. This was going to get worse, unless someone stopped it. Nora appeared out of the dark, her arm brushing his. "Gabe. Is Harper okay? We're fine. For now." "I think there's a fire," she whispered, swallowing panic. "The doors aren't opening. People are pushing." "I know," he said. "Listen, I need you to stay with Harper." Nora's hand found his sleeve. "Where are you going?" "To the power control." His voice was low, steady. "I know how this building is wired. You can't go out there. It's pitch black. Exactly why I have to go." A new noise rose from the crowd, a heavy banging, people throwing their weight against the locked exit. Harper flinched. Gabe crouched to her height, cupping her face gently. "Bug, listen to me. I have to go fix something so everyone can get out. You stay with Nora. She won't leave you." Her small fingers grabbed his shirt. "No. Don't go where I can't see you. Please." He felt that plea, like an old wound reopening. She had whispered it at her mother's funeral, clinging to him when strangers tried to guide her away. He'd promised then, and 1,000 times since, that she wouldn't lose him too. But staying now meant risking everyone in this gym, including her. He pressed his forehead lightly to hers. "You know how I always make your nightlight work again when it breaks?" She nodded shakily. "Well, the whole building just lost its nightlight. I'm the only one who knows how to fix it." Her lip trembled. "Promise you'll come back." He swallowed the memory rising in his throat, Louisa's last promise, broken by fate. He forced his voice steady. "I promise." Nora wrapped an arm around Harper, pulling her close. "We'll be right here when you get back, Gabe. Go." He squeezed his daughter's hand one more time and stood. Around him, people were moving, blind voices overlapping in frightened surges. He moved through them with purpose, his body remembering training he hadn't used in years, counting steps, mapping the room by memory, navigating obstacles with touch instead of sight. At the gym doors, he pushed through to the hallway. It was colder here, which meant the fire was still contained. He moved quickly, sliding his hand along the painted cinder block wall until he reached the junction where the left wing branched off. The air smelled faintly of scorched insulation. He switched direction. Far behind him, he heard Nora calling out names, trying to keep kids calm. Someone else shouted angrily at Mark. A baby cried. The noise only made Gabe walk faster. At the electrical room, he found the door warm, but not hot, good sign. He pulled his sleeve over his hand, cracked it open, and slipped inside. His eyes adjusted to faint, pulsing blue light. A dying transformer panel spitting tiny sparks like fireflies. A metal conduit had blown its cover wires, exposed, smoking. The main breaker had surged into a fault state, which meant the override door locks were frozen. He whispered to the dark, "Okay, girl, show me what you need." Old habit, talking to machines as if they were living things. He scanned fast. Cross-wired panel, overdue maintenance. One wrong move could trigger a chain reaction. He needed the locks released, not all power restored. He drew a slow breath. Find the bypass. Forget the rest. Just like triage. He reached for the insulated handle on the manual release, but the ground trembled beneath him. A low hum deep in the wall signaled another overload brewing. No time. He pulled open the junction box with his bare hand, ignoring the sting of metal biting skin, and found the emergency disconnect, a thin strip of copper that looked ready to snap. He twisted it hard. A jolt shot up his arm, a flash tore through the box, and sparks burst like fireworks. And the hallway went silent. Then a long mechanical clunk reverberated through the building. The magnetized locks released. He staggered back, shaking out his arm, panting through the pain. For a moment, he leaned against the wall, letting the adrenaline settle just enough to keep moving. Voices rose from the gym, shouting footsteps, gasps of relief. The doors were open. He pushed off the wall and began heading back. But as he reached the junction, he heard something that froze him. "Harper. Has anyone seen Harper?" Nora's voice, high, terrified. A chill went through him, colder than any December wind. He broke into a run. When he burst through the gym doors, the room was chaos again, but different now. People streamed out the exits, volunteers guiding them with glow sticks. Smoke drifted harmlessly from a charred hoop, but the air was clearing. And on the far side of the gym, near the toppled craft tables, Nora stood alone, frantic. She was right behind me. She cried to a group of parents. Someone pushed. We got separated. I thought she followed. I thought Gabe didn't hear the rest. His vision narrowed into a dark tunnel. Harper. His voice cracked, raw. Harper. Panic surged in his veins. Not the blind kind, the kind that sharpened everything. He scanned the room. Too many shapes, too much shifting movement, not enough light. Then a small, wavering cry reached him from behind the bleachers. "Daddy!" He sprinted. The cluster of chairs blocked the path, so he kicked them aside, climbing over toppled seats and discarded coats. When he rounded the corner, he found her curled behind the folded bleachers, hugging her knees, tight, shaking. He dropped to his knees so fast he nearly slipped. "Bug. Hey, I'm here." She lunged into his arms, sobbing into his neck. He held her so close his ribs hurt. I lost you," she cried. "People were pushing. I couldn't find you." "You're okay," he whispered fiercely. I've got you. Behind them, voices quieted as people noticed what had just happened. Noticed who had run toward danger instead of away from it. Nora approached slowly, her expression a mix of guilt and awe. "Gabe, I'm so sorry." I turned for 1 second. He shook his head. "Doesn't matter. She's safe." But the room had changed. The whispers were different now. Not judgment. Recognition. The man they'd dismissed as tired, fragile, maybe not all there had just single-handedly prevented the gym from turning into a death trap. And they had seen it. Parents murmured to each other. Volunteers looked toward the hallway he'd come from, piecing together what he must have done. Even Mark stood frozen near the stage, his mouth slightly open, as though watching someone he'd never truly seen before. Nora knelt beside him. "You saved everyone in this room." He shook his head. "I got lucky." "No," she said quietly. "You knew exactly what you were doing." Harper pulled back enough to look at him. "Daddy, were you scared?" He tucked her hair behind her ear. "I was terrified." "Then why'd you go?" He paused. The answer rose from a place deeper than memory. "Because once upon a time," he said softly, "someone told me that helping people was what I was meant to do, and I promised I'd never stop, even when it hurts." She pressed her forehead to his. "I'm glad you didn't." Around them, the last of the crowd filed out into the cold night, leaving the gym scattered with chairs and glitter and the faint echo of what could have been tragedy. Gabe stood with Harper in his arms, Nora watching quietly beside him, and the entire power dynamic of the night shifted beneath their feet. People no longer saw a broken man. They saw a protector, a man with steadiness in crisis. A man with a past they'd never bothered to ask about. A man who had just rewritten their assumptions in a single dangerous moment. And somewhere in that dim gym, as the last emergency light flickered back on, someone whispered what the whole room now understood. "That guy, he's a real hero." For a long moment, no one in the gym moved. The building hummed with a strange, heavy quiet, the kind that settles after disaster, brushes close, but doesn't quite take what it came for. The last curls of smoke drifted upward toward the rafters. Folding chairs lay scattered like fallen dominoes. Glitter from the craft tables shimmered across the floor like frost. And at the center of it all stood Gabe Lawson, cradling his daughter against his chest, while the community he'd lived beside for years stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. A few volunteers approached, tentatively offering blankets, offering hot chocolate, offering anything just to fill the thick silence. Their hands trembled, their faces were pale, but their eyes, every single one, kept drifting back to Gabe, trying to make sense of the man who had vanished into a dark hallway and returned moments before the entire gym could have descended into chaos. Nora hovered near him, guilt still tight in her expression, but softened now by something like awe. "You okay?" she whispered to him. He nodded, brushing Harper's hair back as she hiccuped against his shoulder. "We're okay." But even as he said it, he could feel eyes on him, questions building, assumptions crumbling. Mark Halprin approached last. He didn't stride. He didn't smirk. He came with hesitant steps, like a man walking toward the truth of his own misjudgment. "Gabe," he said, clearing his throat. "The fire department's on the way. They want to know how you got the locks open." "Manual override," Gabe answered simply. "The transformer needed a bypass." Mark blinked. "A bypass? You just knew how to do that?" Gabe kept his attention on Harper. "I've worked on systems like that before. Worked where Mark asked. I mean, what exactly did you do before the delivery job?" It wasn't an accusation this time. It was something closer to reverence and fear that he'd been wrong. Badly wrong. Nora looked up at him too. Others gathered close, listening. Gabe let out a slow breath. He'd avoided this conversation for years, not because he was ashamed, but because talking about his past meant talking about everything he lost. And he'd spent too long trying not to bleed in front of people who didn't care enough to look deeper. But tonight, they'd all been in the dark together, literally and otherwise. He adjusted Harper so she sat on the bleacher beside him, still holding his hand. "I was a combat medic," he said quietly. "Army 10th Mountain Division. Second half of my deployments, I trained in field electrical repair and infrastructure stabilization. When a base generator failed or power grid took damage, we improvised to keep things running. Lives depended on knowing how to restore power under pressure." A murmur rippled through the parents. Harper squeezed his hand, as if afraid he might disappear. Nora's breath caught. "You never said you served." He shrugged. "Wasn't something folks needed to know." "Gabe," she touched his arm gently, "this community should have known who you are." Mark stepped back as if Gabe had grown 3 feet taller. I had no idea," he stammered. "All that stuff earlier, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," Gabe said calmly. "But it's fine. Most people see what they expect to see." The room went very still. No judgment. No bitterness. Just truth. A truth that made several parents look down at the floor. One of the teachers, Mrs. Riggins, who had once told Harper she seemed a little too grown for her age, approached with glossy eyes. "Mr. Lawson, thank you. We didn't understand what you were capable of. We misread you." Another parent added, "You saved our kids tonight." And another, "I should have asked how you were doing instead of assuming." Mark swallowed hard. "If you hadn't been here." "But I was," Gabe said simply. That was when the fire captain burst through the side door with a small team. "Everyone okay in here? Any injuries?" he called. "We're safe," Nora said. She pointed toward Gabe. "Because of him." The captain turned. His eyes widened. "Lawson." Gabe blinked. "Captain Hayes." The captain laughed once, rough and disbelieving. "Holy hell, I thought you moved out of state. Last time I saw you, you were reinforcing a substation with nothing but duct tape and stubbornness." A ripple of realization went through the room. Gabe wasn't just handy. He wasn't just a tired single dad. He was someone who had kept entire units alive in places where power outages weren't inconveniences. They were death sentences. Captain Hayes clapped him hard on the back. "You still have the instincts. The manual override on a blown transformer while the panel's sparking. That takes guts and precision." He turned to the crowd. "You folks got lucky tonight, and you owe this man your thanks." Gabe shifted uncomfortably. Compliments never sat right with him. "I did what anyone would have done." "No, Hayes corrected, you did what trained specialists do." "There's a difference." Harper beamed with a pride so fierce it nearly split her small frame. She looked at her father as if seeing him anew not just as her protector, but as something larger, something heroic. For the first time since Louisa died, Gabe let someone see him that way without pulling back. Nora stepped closer, her voice softer now, steady with emotion. "What you did wasn't just brave, it was incredible. And stupid," Hayes added with a grin. "But the good kind of stupid." Gabe exhaled a shaky laugh. "Wouldn't be the first time." Parents gathered around, offering gratitude pats on the shoulder-shaken smiles. Even the volunteers who had whispered earlier couldn't meet his eyes without apology. The power shift was unmistakable. Where there had been judgment, there was now respect. Where there had been gossip, there was now understanding. Where there had been distance, there was a pull, people wanting to stand near him to show they finally saw him clearly. But with respect came something else, a doorway opening that he hadn't expected. Captain Hayes stepped aside and motioned Gabe away from the crowd. "Can I talk to you for a second?" Gabe nodded and followed a few feet. Harper stayed with Nora, who wrapped an arm protectively around the girl. Hayes lowered his voice. "Listen, we've got a position that opened up last month. Emergency response technician. Part fieldwork, part training, part community outreach. Mostly electrical stabilization and crisis handling. You'd be damn good at it." Gabe blinked. "You offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance," Hayes said. "A chance to use what you know again. A chance to not hide your own skill under the weight you've been carrying." Gabe's chest tightened. "I left that world, Hayes." "After Louisa, I know," the captain said gently. "I know why. But you've still got the instincts, and today proved they're not gone. They're just buried under grief." Gabe looked across the room to Harper. She was laughing now, small, relieved bursts, while Nora knelt beside her, helping her drink a cup of cocoa without spilling. That image, his daughter safe, comforted, smiling after the worst scare she'd had in years, hit him harder than any electrical shock. Hayes followed his gaze. "That girl needs to see her dad living, not just surviving." Gabe swallowed hard. "I don't know if I'm ready." "No one's ever ready," Hayes said. "But you're needed. And something tells me you haven't felt needed in a long time." Gabe let out a slow, trembling breath. Needed. The word sank deep. Behind them, Mark approached cautiously. "Gabe, if you'd ever want to help with safety planning for future events, or hell, anything, we'd be honored. I was wrong about you." He didn't expect forgiveness. It was written all over his face. Gabe nodded. "We all see what we're ready to see." Mark's voice cracked. "Still, you deserved better." Nora stepped up, then Harper beside her, both looking at him with quiet warmth. "You saved us," Nora said. "But more than that, you showed this whole room who you really are." Harper squeezed his hand. "I always knew," she said softly. A looseness spread through Gabe's chest, something unclenching after years of being wound tight. Tonight had forced him into the darkest hallway of his own fear, and he had come out the other side not just alive, but seen. Captain Hayes clapped him once more on the shoulder. "Think about the job. Not tonight, you've had enough for one night, but soon." Gabe nodded slowly. "Yeah, I'll think about it." Hayes smiled. "Good, because you're wasted on delivery routes." Harper leaned against his leg, tired, but finally calm. "Daddy, can we go home now?" He lifted her into his arms, her head settling against his shoulder with absolute trust. "Yeah, Bug," he said softly. "We can go home." But as they walked toward the exit past the humbled parents, the relieved volunteers, the stunned PTA president, and the fire captain who had just handed him a second chance, Gabe felt the weight of a decision gathering around him. A new opportunity, a new direction, a new beginning he never expected to want again. And Part 5 would bring the moment where he'd have to choose stay hidden in the quiet life he built from grief, or step into the kind of purpose that might finally heal him. The next few days felt different in ways Gabe couldn't quite name. He'd walk Harper to school and notice parents who once offered tight, polite nods, now crossing the sidewalk to shake his hand. Some apologized. Some simply thanked him. And some just stood there a little awkwardly, guilt pressing on their faces as they realized how shallow their judgments had been. Even Mark Halprin, the guy who had spent years sizing him up like a half-finished project, came by their apartment one evening with a tin of Christmas cookies he'd clearly bought on the way over. He stood on the step, hat in hand, words tumbling out in uneven pieces. "I was wrong about you, Gabe. Not just the other night, but for a long time. I misread you. And I'm sorry." Gabe didn't give him absolution. He just nodded, took the cookies, and said, "Thanks, Mark." It was enough. Mark knew it was enough, too. Nora checked in every day. Sometimes it was a text, sometimes a call. Sometimes she'd swing by after work with hot chocolate for Harper and a quiet smile for him. It wasn't flirtatious. It wasn't hesitant. It was something more human than either two people who had been through a scare together and found something steady in its wake. But the thing that surprised him most came the following Monday morning when Captain Hayes showed up outside his building, leaning on the hood of his truck like he'd been waiting for hours. "Morning," Hayes said. "Come take a drive with me." Gabe didn't ask where. He just slid in. Hayes drove them across town to the Emergency Response Division headquarters, a building Gabe had avoided for years because walking past it made something in his chest twist tight. Hayes led him inside past the front desk, down a hallway lined with old photographs, storm rescues, wildfire crews, disaster responses from decades past. He stopped outside a glass door marked "Training and Field Operations Staff Only." "This role I mentioned," Oz said, "it's yours if you want it. I can push it through today." Gabe stared at the floor. "I don't know if I belong here anymore." Hayes shook his head. "That's the damn thing, Lawson. You never stopped belonging. You just stopped believing it." Gabe swallowed the lump rising in his throat. "I have a daughter. I can't take risks that put her back in the place she was that night, in the dark, scared, waiting for me to come back." Hayes rested a hand on the door. "Then don't take risks you shouldn't. This job isn't combat. It's teaching, preparing, stepping in when small things go wrong before they turn into big things. You'll be home for dinner most nights, and you'll show her what strength looks like when it grows roots instead of scars." Gabe lifted his eyes then and saw his reflection in the glass. Not the tired delivery driver everyone assumed he was. Not the widower with quiet grief stitched behind every smile. But a man who still had purpose in his hands, courage in his bones, and a daughter who believed he could fix the world because he always fixed hers. "I'll try," he said finally. "I don't know if I can promise more than that." Hayes smiled. Trying is how it starts. 3 months later, life felt different. Not easier, just fuller. Gabe still worked long days, but they were meaningful ones, training volunteers on emergency procedure, inspecting aging infrastructure in community buildings, teaching high schoolers how to use first aid kits and thermal blankets. He came home smelling of dust and copper, not exhaustion. Harper flourished too. She bragged about her dad in school, but not the way kids brag about fame. She bragged about the night he made the whole building breathe again, which was her poetic way of describing what happened. Her nightmares, the ones that had haunted her, after losing her mom, faded into something gentler, softened by knowing her world had someone who ran toward danger instead of away from it. Nora remained in their lives in a way that felt natural, unforced. She and Harper built Saturday routines, pancakes, and thrift store craft hunts, and trips to the park where Harper tried to teach her to throw a football. Sometimes when Harper ran ahead on the grass, Nora and Gabe would sit on a bench, the quiet between them, warm and comfortable instead of lonely. Once she said softly, "You know, you gave that entire community a second chance that night at safety, and maybe at understanding." He looked at her, then really looked, and realized she had been part of the reason he'd found the courage to step back into the world at all. The following December, the community center held another holiday carnival. This time, the lights had been rewired. The emergency exits had new manual releases. Fire extinguishers lined the walls. A generator waited outside in case of failure. And when Gabe walked in with Harper at his side, the entire room paused, not with judgment, not with pity, but with the kind of warmth people reserve for the ones who changed something real in their lives. Parents waved him over. Kids ran up to thank him without knowing exactly what for. Volunteers pulled him aside to show off their upgraded safety plans, hoping for his approval. Harper squeezed his hand, eyes bright. "They're happy to see you, Daddy." He smiled. "I'm happy to see them too." Nora found them near the cookie table. She wore a simple sweater and a little gold necklace that caught the overhead lights. "You think tonight will be calmer than last year?" she teased. "I'd settle for predictable," he said. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "You deserve good things now. You know that, right?" He crossed his arms, looking out over the crowd. "Maybe I'm starting to believe it." And as Harper tugged Nora toward the craft tables, Gabe followed, watching the two of them laugh, the lights reflecting in their eyes like tiny stars. For the first time in years, he felt a peace that didn't come from hiding, but from stepping into the life waiting for him on the other side of fear. And if there's a lesson in all of it, it's this. Sometimes the world underestimates the quiet ones. Sometimes grief convinces you your best days are over. Sometimes you forget there's still fire in you, steady, bright, and waiting. But every now and then life throws you into the dark, just so you can discover you were meant to bring the light back.